Okay, so we are back with our Q&A. This next question comes from J. Cool. Favorite Powerpuff Girls and Power Rangers villain? And do you agree that the Powerpuff Girls reboot is an atrocity? My favorite Power Rangers villains are the Psycho Rangers. I just liked the Psycho Rangers because they had really cool costumes, and they were actually a threat to the Power Rangers. My favorite Powerpuff Girls villains are the Rowdy Rough Boys, and yes, the Powerpuff Girls reboot is terrible. Next question comes from Thorn Chick. What was life like during the 90s and early 2000s? Well, I can say it was a happier and simple time during that generation, especially knowing it was a pre 9/11 world. I was born in 1991, and I only remember from 1995. But I can tell you what the generation was like. Rock songs still topped the charts. We didn't have iPods or cell phones in our pockets. Physical activity was fun. Every rock, rap, Latin, and pop star was dropping dead at the peak of their careers. People wore flannel in the summer. There were things people agreed on. Celebrities weren't stalked as much by the media. We didn't need the internet to do things. We weren't at war. Issues weren't always in black and white. Wrestling was really hot in the late 90s and early 2000s. Nickelodeon were at their peak. Cartoon Network were starting to get good around 97. MTV still played music videos. Gaming was pretty good. The whole boy band trend was pretty popular. You had Windows 95 and 98 internet access. And with internet access, it pretty much changed everything. You had a Yahoo Instant Messenger. And that's pretty much some of the things I can tell you on what the 90s were like. The early 2000s were still pretty good. There was no Facebook, no Tumblr, no Twitter, no YouTube. People weren't as glued to their phones as they are now. I myself was too young to own a phone, but I remembered my parents and my older brother owning a simple little flip phone. Oh yeah, and our phones still didn't have internet access. That wouldn't be until a few years from then on. I spent most of my days playing with other kids my age, spending time with family, and going to school. I spent a lot of time outside doing creative activities like reading, writing, and drawing, and playing instruments because I had way more spare time than I do now. And I didn't have distracting websites like I do now. The cars were pretty much the same. There was that weird Y2K incident before the new year of 2000. Also, there was the 9/11 terrorist attack in 2001. I definitely remember that. But yeah, that's pretty much what the 90s and early 2000s were. To me, they were way better times, but that's just me, so. Number 2, do you think Sega will ever make another Jet Set radio game? Probably not. Someone a few years ago did pitch an idea for Sega to make a new Jet Set radio game, and of course, Sega turned it down. Now, I'm not sure why Sega won't revive most of their old IPs, because there's definitely a fan base for a lot of these games. But for some reason, Sega just wants to continue to riding Sonic's blue cock. And don't get me wrong, I love Sonic, but Sega has so many other great games in their franchise that they could revive, and they choose not to. You know, they have the Panzer Dragoon franchise, the Golden Axe franchise, Nights into Dreams, Streets of Rage, Vectorman, and just so many more. And it really sucks because the two Jet Set radio games were some of my favorites in the history of a Sega's gaming library. And there's a fan base for it too. The games were just very artistic with the cel shaded graphics. The gameplay was fun, and it had a really kick ass soundtrack. But they choose not to revive the franchise for some reason. And it sucks. But you never know. Maybe they'll finally get their heads out of their asses and give the fans what they want. And what are your thoughts on Cartoon Network's many forgotten era before the Powerhouse era, which is the Starburst era? I don't remember much about that time in Cartoon Network because it was very short lived. When I saw Velasky Bump upload a video and a YouTube video showcasing bumpers from that time, it sort of reminded me of that forgotten time in Cartoon Network. Like I said, I don't remember much about that time. I do know it lasted from 1997 to 1998, and I did remember recording some Toonami tapes from that time. But aside from that, I don't remember much about that time in Cartoon Network. Other than Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, and Cow and Chicken were the main shows around that time. However, I will say it was a pretty underrated time in Cartoon Network. Even though it's often forgotten, it's way better than what we're getting now from them. Next question comes from Momento Mori. What are your thoughts on Doodle Tones making that commentary on you? I thought you didn't deserve that kind of treatment from him or her. The commentary community sucks. It is what it is. Now, for those wondering why I never made a response to any of the commentary videos made on me, it's because I just don't have the time to argue with a bunch of nerds online over fucking cartoons, because my time is very valuable. Now to get things straight. Look, that Thundercats roar and my rant on Cartoon Network reboots was just me unleashing my frustrations on the network. It was just me speaking my mind the way I wanted to. And why do I feel that way? It's because I feel that Cartoon Network has gotten super lazy with making the type of animated shows we want. Whether you agree with my statements or not, I have a right to feel that way. And no one can tell me otherwise. You know, like, I look at Cartoon Network currently, and they're honestly the worst I've ever seen them. The schedule is bad. They don't have any real action cartoons. And no, shows like OKKO Let's Be Heroes doesn't count. I want real action cartoons like Symbionic Titans and Young Justice type of quality. They have no 22-minute shows, and every show follows the 11-minute format. And since Doodle Tones asked me to explain myself as to why I hate the 11-minute format, like, honestly, I don't really hate it, because there were shows I grew up on as a kid that were 11 minutes long, but there was also a handful of 22-minute shows. It's a problem to me now because every show follows that 11-minute format, and certain shows need to be 22 minutes because 11 minutes is not enough time to tell a cohesive story. If people want to make the belief that cartoons are getting better and kids are getting smarter, then why do the networks talk down to the kids by giving them nothing but 11-minute shows? What, because they assume that kids have a very low attention span to watch a show for more than 11 minutes long? And because of that, Nickelodeon is starting to follow in that same footstep. And what do they get as a result? Low ratings. And they can't even scratch top 10 in television. None of their shows can't even scratch 1 million views, and that is sad and pathetic. And people continue to apologize and defend this stuff, as if everything is gonna be okay, and here we are now. Oh well, they're doing it because it's cheaper, and they can get more television revenue that way. Yeah, and all of their investors have backed out, because Cartoon Network is no longer ranked in the top 10. And people keep telling me that, oh, you're a bad person because you want Christina Miller gone. As if what? Why do you care if Christina Miller is gone? Do you not want better for the network? Besides, she makes $1 million every year. She'll be fine. Like, it's not that big a deal, guys. But going back to Doodle Tones, I pretty much disagree with pretty much everything he or she, or whatever the fuck gender it is, Especially the part he or she or it said,
"Oh, well, if you don't support Cartoon Network, then they won't have the money to make the shows that you want."
Pfft, so fucking white. Like, even if I were to support Cartoon Network, it's just going to encourage them to continue doing what they're doing with the network. And that is doing all of these cheap-ass reboots and continuing to doing the 11-minute format. So, in a way, it's pretty much a lose-lose situation. And as for her co-host, Jonah Hill, like, I could barely understand what the fuck he was saying in that video. Like, what? The only thing I want from this damn network is Christina Miller and all of these out-of-touch executives to be gone. But then again, it shouldn't really matter to me too much because even though she's gone, they'll probably just bring in someone else that's just as bad, if not worse, than Christina Miller. But then again, I don't know how anybody can be worse than Christina Miller. And as for Doodle Tones and the commentary community, they can make all the videos they want on me, but at the end of the day, I'm still gonna come on here and tell it like it is. I really don't take back anything I said in that video, and they will remain that way. Maybe I'll say this. I kinda came off a bit whiny in that video, but besides that, I really don't take back anything I said in that video. Period. And if you go back to the comment section of my rant on the Cartoon Network reboots, like, almost everybody were in an agreement with me. So there's that. And let me just say this. Oh, fuck, man. Like, anybody who can honestly take the commentary community seriously, you need to get a life, like, seriously. Because they're a fucking joke. And what's your favorite modern anime? Attack on Titan. Next question. Okay, so next question comes from Dark Era 1998. In your opinion, what was the last good year for WWE in your opinion? I'd probably say 2004. 2002 was probably their last great year in my opinion because of how big the roster was, the transition into the Ruthless Aggression era, and the brand split. And you even had good pay-per-views and storylines. And just almost everything about it worked. The only thing I didn't like about that year was WWF getting rid of the F and replacing it with the E because of legal reasons from a damn panda company. And it just felt like once they got rid of the F, the fun went with it. But 2002 was a great year for the WWE. Like, this is how you transition from the hottest period into the new era. 2004 was sort of like their last good year in my opinion, even though I felt the product was getting stale during those times, especially with Brock Lesnar and Goldberg leaving. SmackDown wasn't that good in 2004, but Raw was still pretty entertaining to watch. But yeah, 2004 was probably their last good year, and 2002 was their last great year. Let's see. Ricky Katchem asks, what's your favorite handheld gaming console? The Game Boy Advance SP. Now, the Game Boy Advance to me was when Nintendo finally got it right with the handhelds. Because the original Game Boy I've always looked at as a Pokemon and Tetris machine, and that's it. I do love the Game Boy Advance, but the Game Boy Advance SP was a much better improvement. For the fact that the screen could finally light up, which meant I didn't have to use a flashlight anymore, and it also came with a charger, so no more going to the store to buying batteries. I also loved the design for the handheld, for the fact that it was shaped in a clamshell design. Plus, it had so many great games from Metroid Fusion, Mega Man Zero, Dragon Ball Advanced Adventures, Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, Dragon Ball Z The Legacy of Goku 2, and many more. You know, the Game Boy Advance was just a great handheld with 16-bit graphics. His second question: do you think the SWAT Kats Revolution will be a success to revive or reboot the show? Maybe. But I highly suggest the creators behind the show shoot for Netflix, since Netflix has revived a lot of old shows. I do know that Cartoon Network passed on it because they're idiots, especially knowing they need some really cool action shows to bring variety to the network. But we are talking about modern Cartoon Network here. But Netflix would definitely be the best choice to revive or reboot the show. And maybe it will be a success. Who knows? And his third question: which wrestling game do you prefer? No Mercy or SmackDown Here Comes the Pain? I love both games, but if I had to choose, it'd be SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. Next question comes from Sega Boy 99. How would you make Sonic cool again? That's actually a pretty interesting question now that you ask that. I'm actually planning on making a video on how I would make Sonic cool again, so look out for that. His second question: do you think Sega would still be alive making consoles if Sony never entered the gaming realm? It's interesting now that you ask that. I'm not sure on just how much of an impact Sony had on Sega leaving the gaming market. Had Ken Kernaraji and them decided to not make consoles, then the PS1 would have never existed, meaning that Sega would have not had a reason to rush out the Saturn, and we would have gotten a better system out of it. That's also for the fact that the PS2 wouldn't exist to kill the Dreamcast, and Microsoft wouldn't have entered the gaming realm. So I think Sega would have a chance to still be around. But you also gotta take to account that Sega also made a lot of dumb asinine decisions to ruin their own reputation. Look at the Sega CD and the 32X. So maybe they'd still be alive today, but we'll never know. And also, do you think that SatAM will be revived? For those that don't know what he's talking about, he's talking about the first Sonic cartoon from the 90s. Maybe it's a possibility, dude. Lots of shows have gotten revivals over the years, so it's possible. Next question comes from Miss Lunatic. Do you think we need more dark comedy cartoons like Invader Zim? Hell yeah. I love dark comedies like The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy and Invader Zim. And it would at least be something different, because networks, especially Cartoon Network, are not doing anything to push the envelope. But nowadays, it's like super PC. And I'm sure kids' networks wouldn't allow that because they're afraid of parents getting upset. But Netflix would definitely be the best platform for dark comedy cartoons, because Netflix has a lot of mature shows, and even for animation that really push the envelope. And they're not holding back because Netflix has no restrictions. So yeah, we do need more dark comedies. And number 2, do you think Jonan Vasquez should make his own original animated series on Netflix? Like I said, Netflix would be the best platform for dark, edgy, and mature animated show. I've read his comics, and I would love if he were to bring a comic series like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac to life as a Netflix show. So I definitely would see Jonan Vasquez doing more in the animation world, especially with his dark sense of humor. And I want to see the man do more. Next question comes from the Radical Reject. Who's your favorite metal band of all time? Pantera. Number 2, Do you agree that Blockbuster is better than Netflix? Well, it's kind of hard to say, especially knowing that Netflix is better known for putting Blockbuster out of business. In fact, I just heard that one Blockbuster store closed down in Australia, and there is only one store left, which is pretty sad, because now Blockbuster is pretty much close to being completely gone. But I can say there were some things Blockbuster did better than Netflix. For one, better variety. Two, you can actually go to the store with friends and talk about movies you like. And you can actually own DVDs physically. And let me tell you, owning DVDs physically is way better than streaming old movies and TV shows, because you get better picture quality, you get a bunch of new features, and it's yours forever. I do miss Blockbuster as it was part of my childhood growing up. Renting movies with your friends and girlfriends were some of the best times, and it's sad that it's completely gone. But we just have to move on with the world. And number 3, do you listen to any modern rock bands? Yeah, I do. It's kinda hard to find good music in this day and age, especially knowing I have to search the internet to find some good bands to listen to. But I do listen to some modern rock bands, like this one band called Nothing More, and they're a really good band. And this one other band called Basement, who made a really good song called Stigmata, and I can tell this band is heavily inspired by Deftones, just from the way the song sounds. And it proves that rock music isn't dead, and that the problem is that we live in a generation of people that want to listen to nothing but shitty pop and rap music. Next question comes from Raze, and he asks, what's your favorite WrestleMania? Without a shadow of a doubt, WrestleMania 17. I mean, like, what can I say about the show that hasn't already been said? The triple threat hardcore match with Raven, Kane, and Big Show was a lot of fun. Vince and Shane McMahon's street fight was amazing. TLC 2 was a legendary match. And Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin's main event was outstanding. And I'm one of those few people that didn't mind the Stone Cold Steve Austin heel turn. The show itself wasn't perfect, but it's still an amazing show with memorable matches. His second question, who do you prefer, Jeff Hardy or Rob Van Dam? I love both guys, but if I had to pick, it'd be Rob Van Dam. Mainly for the fact that Jeff Hardy can be a bit sloppy in his matches, but I'm still a fan. Next question comes from Dark Master. Do you think Saturday morning cartoons will ever make a comeback? No, I don't think so. I think Saturday morning cartoons are always going to be a thing in the past, because no longer do you have to wake up on Saturday mornings to watch cartoons. Now you can pretty much watch cartoons whenever you want to, because of the advancement in technology. So no, as much as I would love for it to happen, because Saturday morning cartoons were a part of my childhood, it's just not gonna happen. Number 2, what's your favorite action cartoon? Too many for me to choose from. From SWAT Cats, Batman Beyond, the He-Man 2002 cartoon, Gargoyles, Batman the Animated Series, Spectacular Spider-Man, Reboot. But if I had to choose, it would be Batman Beyond. And number 3, how would you improve a Cartoon Network? Again, I kind of already answered that question, but here's what I would do. I would get rid of all of these cheap-ass reboots and bring back more real action cartoons, and create a weekday afternoon block similar to how Toonami was back in the late 90s and early 2000s. I would greenlight Galactic Kids Next Door. I would bring back 22-minute shows. And I would fix this damn schedule where 1 or 2 shows is not oversaturating the network. The schedule will be fixed to where I can air a variety of shows. And that's just an idea of how I'd fix the network.